know I'm going to need to add are the delegates, the 8 delegates' names to the agenda. So when we get there, I want to make sure that it's written as part of the agenda item, the 8 names. So I've called the meeting to order at 10 o'clock, and I'm entertaining a motion to approve the agenda with the revisions of adding the delegates' names as well. Okay, I think you have everything else. The delegates' names to the agenda.
Good morning, Madam President. This is Tehran. I approve that motion to be so moved.
It's been moved by Tehran. Was that Ardell?
I second it.
Okay, it's been seconded and probably moved by Ardell. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. At this time, reading and approval of the minutes. Madam Secretary, did we send the minutes out to the membership?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, did everyone, at least on this call, receive a copy of the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a copy of last month's minutes to scroll on the screen? Because we're not going to read them. If not,
Yes, we do.
pardon me?
Yeah, we do have
They're up, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. So
I
This-
don't see the minutes. I see
I was about to say, I stopped because I didn't see the minutes either. So we need to take the agenda down, and so after the reading and approval of the minutes, we're going to go into the membership report, but okay, there it is. And so that was last month's meeting, and this is what was sent out to the membership for reading. And we're not going to go over everything. That's why we sent them out ahead of time. So with that being said, I am going to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes that's presented and that was sent by our secretary.
this is Stacy. I entertain the motion to accept the minutes as presented.
It's been moved by Stacy. Do I have a second?
I second it. Malachi.
Okay, I recognize Malachi as seconding. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Membership report, Angelina?
Yes, good morning, Madam President. For the month of August, we had 6 new memberships as well as 15 lifetime membership payments.
Excellent job. I know in the last meeting I was going to ask you, did that include PayPal and Office, or?
So in the last meeting, it was just PayPal. This one, and in the last meeting we had, there was just 3. So there was an additional 3 added from the office. So that's why it's 6 now.
Okay. Thank you for that report.
You're welcome.
Vice Presidents, do you have any membership reports from your committees, Ardell?
No, I don't have any
Okay,
this time, Madam President.
thank you. Ken, I don't see him on the call. Is he on the call? Okay, Velma, you have any memberships report?
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay, no worries. Let's go on to the office report. Do we have a copy of the office report? Madam Secretary,
Yes.
can we show that, please?
Yes, I'll upload it.
Thank you. I'm not sure what you're showing, Madam Secretary.
On.
Angelina, you have it?
Yes, I'm opening it. Sorry about that. It took a second.
Is this your screen showing a calculator, or is my screen?
Your screen.
Okay, got it.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, so what we're looking at is the office report. Just to let everyone know, we have an office manager, her name, the office manager we have now is Nicole Pearson. However, prior to Nicole, it was Veronica Williams. And so they do a report of what's going on as far as things that they touch within the office, calls, walk-ins, emails, incoming and outgoing mail, technology report and meetings. And so, and then they give an overall total of the touches for that month or what they're able to transcribe. And so for this report, it shows 427 touches by the office manager. And then it's a breakdown into meetings when it comes to what they're responsible for, membership, dine into R&B Festival, and working with Lynn with legal redress. And then dealing with the various issues of our technology with the computers and printers and all of those things. And so one is just to let you know all the things that one person is doing. We need more volunteers, more help all the time in the office. And this is a lot. And so if anyone is ever interested in volunteering for the office, I'm going to ask Nicole Pearson to put her email in the chat or a email in the chat if you're interested. There's no action items on here. It's just a report for the August 2022. Any questions regarding the report? Nada? Okay, then let's go. Thank you for scrolling so they can see the rest of the report of what has happened in 30 days, which is a lot for one person. Okay, with that being said, we're going to go back to the agenda, Madam Secretary. To
Treasury
yes, Stacy.
Treasury reports next. I was just letting you
Oh,
know.
okay. Oh, thank you. Do we have Shirley or Daphne?
Yes, Madam President, the report was given at our executive meeting and all our bills are paid.
Thank you. Shirley Brown is our Assistant Treasurer. And if anyone would like a summary of our treasurer's report, Shirley, can you put your email in the chat or Daphne's email in the chat? And so if any member is interested in the summary of our treasurer's report, please email our treasurer or assistant treasurer, our treasurer, thank you, and she will send you a copy of that for our members.
And Madam President, I just put my email into the chat.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. So now we go to number 8. We're going directly into the actions item. So before we do that, I'm going to go over some preliminary things. We are in an election year, and in election years, there's a number of things. So what I'm going to do, Madam Secretary, can you take the agenda down? Because I want to be able to share my screen at some point. And so what I'm going to ask anyone that's on this meeting right now, if you're not a member, raise your hand. If you're not a member, raise your hand. Raise your electronic hand or, okay, I see 1, 2. Okay, Madam Secretaries, do you see more than 2? Yes, I just see 2.
No, I only seen the one. What was the second one? I seen Greg
And I seen Chris.
and Chris.
Okay. And I'll explain in a minute why I'm asking that question. And so everyone should be members. And so my second question is, those members, did you all receive a letter regarding the elections, either in an email or a letter was sent to your home? If we didn't have your email, we mailed your letter. So did everyone receive their letter? Did anyone not receive a letter? Okay. Okay, so looks like everyone received their letter or some form of information. So that's great. And so the reason I'm saying that is because it is an election year. And so we have certain things that we have to do in the month of August, September, October, and November. And so with that being said, in the month of September, October, November, only members can vote in these meetings. That's the way it should be anyway, but we really have to be careful because it's an election year. So any votes that I move forward with the election process, I just want to make sure that you are aware of that because we're getting ready to go into the election process. So with that, I'm going to ask if I could share my screen. It's disabled. Who's the host? Can you allow me to
You
share my
can share
screen?
now.
Okay. Gosh, I can't. I wish I could move my, okay. This PowerPoint what actually was given to us from the national office to explain the process of 2022 elections. They're different this year. So I'm going to go through them before we go into our process. Any candidate, and if you would like to run for the office of the Sacramento branch of the NAACP, you can run for the office. However, you have to be a member in good standing no later than May 1st of this year, 2022. A member must live and or work in our area, in the area of the branch, and your membership must remain continuous through the date of the election. And so what that means, especially for lifetime members, if you are transcribing live, you can, if you missed your payment, you would not be eligible to run. You can vote, you can pay your payment late and vote for others that are on the ballot, but you can't run because you missed a payment. Now, in the world of the NAACP, bylaw says that you can pay $75 a year. We also have the option within our branch, you can pay $75 a month. If you use the option within the branch of paying $75 a month, you're automatically eligible because you paid more than that year. So again, you must live or work in order to run. Voting members, only members in good standings are eligible to vote for the purpose of the branch. You have to be a member within 30 days prior to the election or prior to any of the meetings. So if you're part of the meetings next month, or if you would like to participate in the voting process next month, make sure you go to our website at naacpsac.com and join so you'll be able to vote. August, we've already did this process, which is why I asked who could, who was eligible members. So in August, our secretarial team sent out the membership letters either through an email and or mail. Bylaw says it has to happen 10 days prior to the September meeting, and we did make that deadline. Each branch must send a notice to each member in good standing to that list. So they did make sure that at that time of all qualified members received that letter. Today we are in the September elect members of the nominating committee. The bylaw says, per bylaws, you can have anyone from 5 to 15 members in good standing. And so within 10 days of the election of the nominating committee, the branch secretary, okay, so let me stop here because we're about to go into this piece. So it says between 5 and 15. So during the executive committee, we voted to bring to the body that we would have 5 members on the election committee. And so one of the action items, once I take this PowerPoint down, would be to vote having 5 members in the election committee. If you're voted, if you're part of, I'm sorry, I keep saying election committee, but it's clearly nominating committee. So, so it talks about the September meeting. The first order of business is to elect a chair and a secretary. However, prior to doing that, that letter that was sent out in August, it should have had a form that you fill out and that you say you would like to run for an office, an officer or a member at large. An officer is defined as the president, first, second, third vice president, treasurer, assistant treasurer, secretary, and assistant secretary. Those are officers that you could run for if you're in good standing. A member at large, a lot of folks get this confused, so I want to explain that too. So a member at large, during the voting period, you are going in as member at large, not as the health chair, the economic chair, those sort of things. You're going in as a member at large. And so once the voting is done, then the president appoints you into those positions, those chair positions, but the ballot would only show member at large. So part of today's process will also be voting on what the ballot looks like. And so we are going to be voting on, what is it? 8 officers, the president, including everyone that I just named. And we had voted to support 9 members at large to be on the ballot. So what does that mean? So you can have up to 22, but we don't want to have 22. We never have. We've always went between 7 or 9. And then anything else, the president can appoint positions. So we're going to vote that in as well. So what does the nominating committee do if you're on the nominating committee? So those petitions that you fill out all goes to the secretary, the unit secretary. The unit secretary will verify eligibility of the person that's running, meaning that person was eligible to run as of May 1, 2022. That's the first part of their job. The second part of their job is that form also says anywhere from 3 to 5 qualified members that signed their form were actually members, meaning they were at least members for 30 days of signing that sheet. And so they have to verify that. So once that has been verified, then the unit secretary will call the first order of the business meeting to the nominating committee. The secretary will hand over all the petitions, even if they discover somebody is not qualified. They will turn over all the petitions. They will let the nominating committee know that I'm turning over 20 petitions, but 3 of them are disqualified. So they will know going in. The nominating committee will take that time to review the petitions that were brought to them, and they will make a determination, however they do it, on who should be on the ballot based on the petitions that were brought into them. And then when they go into the October meeting, the nominating committee will bring forth, the chairman of that committee will bring forth the report of what they've decided that would be on the ballot for the November. So, Madam Secretary, our October meeting is what date?
October 8th.
October 8th. And our October 8th, again, from 10 to 12. And then the day of our elections is what date?
November 12th.
November 12th. And so bylaw says that we have to have elections open at least 4 hours. And so on that day, it's going to be from 10 to 2, the elections will open up. What's different this year is that you're not physically going in to cast your ballot. National will be handling your elections and will be sending you a ballot. And so how are they going to send you a ballot? Through whatever email that you gave your local unit, meaning Sacramento NAACP, that's the email that they're going to use. Now, I can tell you that there was a lot of pushback because it's recognized that a lot of our more seasoned individuals may not have an email. So in the training that we had last week, they added another component and said, if you have a telephone number, they can text you the ballot. So it's dependent upon our secretaries to have the accurate information, and so that they can put it in the portal to make sure that you receive a ballot on November 12th between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. If you don't receive a ballot on election day and you know you are a member, you are to contact the unit secretary, which is Stacy. Stacy, could you please put your email into the chat?
Yeah.
You will contact Stacy immediately. Per our training that we had, Stacy is to communicate with the national office only. It could be something as simple that a letter, we forgot to put the G on Gmail at gmail.com. And they have a way of editing it and making sure you receive a ballot within that time frame. And so she would be working directly, probably with Carmen or Quincy or someone at National, to make those corrections. Don't wait to the last hour and discover that you have not received your ballot. Look for it early on November 12th. Look in your trash, look in all of those things before you say you didn't receive a ballot. If you call me, I can't do anything. The secretaries are 100% responsible for membership and making sure everything is in the portal accurately. So with that, I'm going to stop. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so say for instance, on that date, several people don't get their ballot. And yes, I understand that only the secretary can call national, but do you think we might want to give her some help in receiving the calls so that the information can be relayed to national, within, since we only have a 4-hour window, maybe some other people can be responsible for assisting in taking the calls and giving the names to Stacy to call in. I'm just thinking of the worst case scenario where there's maybe 10 people find that they didn't receive their ballot. They're not all going to be able to get through to Stacy at the same time.
So I would suggest that since Stacy, and Stacy can always appoint Angelina to assist her, but we send everything to Stacy. I would probably CC Angelina.
Absolutely. I understand the sending. I mean, that Stacy's the only one that's going to be able to rectify the situation with national, but I'm speaking on receiving the calls, and maybe those people have to give her a list of people to call in at the same time. I don't know. It's just a thought.
No, I'm just trying to follow you to make sure I have it correctly. So say someone calls you and says 10 people call you, Velma, and they have not received their ballot. And so I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, then you would take those 10 people and get all their information for Stacy and send it to Stacy in order to help her instead of everyone going directly to Stacy. Is that what I hear you saying?
Kind of, because what I'm thinking is 10 people aren't going to be all able to call Stacy at the same time. So it's going to cause some type of frustration. So yes, what you're saying would be to me a viable option.
So what we would hope is that they would email or text so that we would have a
That's a good
document.
idea. Yeah.
And so that way she can do it That's what I would prefer,
That
no
would
calls,
be- mhm.
because then we can verify telephone numbers and or emails and compare it to
good.
what we have in the portal.
Yes, that's a great idea.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Other questions?
Madam President, I just wanted to, I don't know if you, I was doing some other things, so you could have covered this, but I wanted to make sure that it
Well, I
was,
haven't finished my PowerPoint yet, but go ahead.
oh, okay. I was just, oh, okay, you might want to cover it later about the ballot. You can't share ballots or send anyone.
So in the October meeting, just so you know, then we will, so it talks about the nominating committee, makes the report to the general membership. After the nominating committee completes the report, the secretary gets all signed consent forms for the nominees. The chair of the nominating committee shall open the floor for additional nominations. So if for whatever reason there's an open candidate, they can open it up for the floor. The only thing is you have to have a signed petition ready to go. We will not stop the meeting in order for, because it's all Zoom, right? So we can't stop the meeting for you to get petitions signed, because that needs to happen prior to. So, and it says persons nominating from the floor must have signed at least 3 members in good standings and the secretary following their nominations. Then once that has happened, the submission of election date and time deadline is October 5th. We're good because we already have our date and time ready to go, which is November 12th from 10 to 12. Also, after the nomination committee's process has been completed and speeches from candidates on that day can be had with the general membership, determining that we determine the amount of time, or they determine the amount of time that they have the speeches. Then you elect your election supervisory committee, which consists of 5 members in good standings who are not candidates for the office or the at-large positions on the executive committee. Each presidential candidate is entitled to appoint a representative to the election supervisory committee if there's more than one person running for president. My next slide, let's see. So after the nominations committee, okay. Okay, I think I did that one, right? October, November, submission of ballots. Ballots should be submitted within 15 days before the scheduled elections. So the election committee will create the ballot. Those 5 people that we had voted in will create the ballot with the names of the people who are running. And they have to submit that ballot with the date and time of the election 15 days prior to the scheduled election date. And so that would be the responsibility of the those 5 people elected for the election committee. And submission of ballots should be, okay, I did that already. Okay, sorry. All elections will be counted by election buddy. So that's the new system that National will be using. So when you receive your ballot, it's coming from this system called Election Buddy. And since our election ends at 2:00 on November 12th, they explained to us, or to me, that we will know the results 1 hour after the election. So ours end at 2. We should know the results of the election by 3. And it will come to you in the same form they sent your ballot. So if you received your ballot by text, that's how you will find out. If you received your ballot by email, that's how you would find out. Stacy, you want to add something?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes, I was just making sure that we covered the part where it says, that you're not able to, like, if someone doesn't receive a ballot, you cannot send them a copy of your ballot. Those ballots have to come directly from National, and they track them so they know if you've sent someone else a ballot. So there's no, you can't help someone out by sending them a ballot.
That's a good point, Stacy, because they also said if you do that, both the individual that sent it and the one that they attempted to send it to will be disqualified from voting. So we don't want to do that. So your ballot is your ballot and you cannot send it to anyone else.
Madam President,
Yes.
Rory, question, how soon do we have to get our petitions in to the secretary?
So your petitions definitely have to be in before the October meeting. And so the secretaries are looking to turn it over to the nominating committee within 5 days of receipt. So everyone still has some time since we're still in September. So I would say you probably have like 5 to 7 days to try to finish getting that piece done. So if you haven't already, because they sent the information to everyone in August, started the process. But if you haven't already, please finish that within the next 5 to 7 days. Stacy, I understand, has already started to receive some based on the mail out and the email. So they have already started looking at those petitions to validate them, because they need time to validate them before they hand it over to the the nominating committee. I'm getting all these confused. So you still have some time. So if you haven't turned it in yet, you can. And Stacy, I'm trying to remember, did they say on that training that they would accept electronic, like DocuSign type signatures?
Yes.
Did they?
Mhm.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So if you have DocuSign or that sort of thing, and people, we can use that. That is an option. They did put that out there.
Hey, Madam President, I have a question. This is Teron.
Sure.
So my question is, I believe you said up to 22 member at large positions can be placed onto the ballot, but our branch is only going to place 9, I believe, or 10. I don't recall the number, forgive me. My question is, what member at large positions will be placed on the actual ballot? I don't think you covered that yet.
You don't title, it will all say member at large.
Oh, okay.
Everybody will say member at large. So if anyone is running for their positions to come back on, and maybe you put on their membership chair, I
Yes.
need you to go back and wipe that out and put member at large.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
Only persons that don't have to wipe that out are officers, because they are running for those actual positions. But the chair positions, for the purpose of the election year only, you have to put member at large on those forms.
Okay, that makes sense. I will get that corrected. Thank you for the clarity.
Okay. Good question, though. Other questions? Nada? Okay, then I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask you to bring the agenda back up. And so we're going to immediately go into the process of the election process. So I just need to see. Okay, so number one, the first action item is to establish the election nominating committee of the number of 5. So remember, it said between 5 and 15. The executive committee voted on 5, so this is the ratification of the 5. So I'm going to entertain a motion that we use the number 5 to choose 5 nominating committees. That's the motion I'm entertaining.
So move.
It's been moved by Rory Kaufman. Do I have a second?
And I second it.
It's been seconded by Teron. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? So moved. Next action item is defining what the ballot looks like. The ballot will include 8 officers: president, first vice, second vice, third vice, treasurer, assistant treasurer, secretary, and assistant treasurer, and assistant secretary. And 9 members at large is what we need to ratify. So I'm entertaining a motion that the ballot reflects 8 officers and 9 members at large.
So moved. This is Malachi.
It's been moved by Malachi, and the second was by
Second.
who? Secretaries, help me out. Who
Uh,
seconded that?
Rory,
Oh, Rory?
I
Okay,
seconded.
okay. It's been moved and seconded by Rory. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. And so this says establish a supervisory committee, but I believe we need to correct that, and this is the nominating committee.
Yes.
Okay, we need to correct that. So, so we've already voted on 5. So let me explain how this process will go. We don't use Robert rules, we use the bylaws. And so as chair and president of this meeting, I will open up the nominating process, and my membership can nominate individuals to be on the nominating committee. The rules are that you can have no more than 2 executive committee members on the nominating committee, but the other 3 would have to be members of the branch, not part of the executive committee. So a total of 5. So when I open it up, I will say, I'm opening up the nominating committee. Anyone interested in nominating someone on the committee? I have to say that per the bylaws 3 times. If people are raising your electronic hands, and I need the secretaries to help me look at that, you as members will say, identify who you are and say, I would like to nominate Denzel Washington. And then I will say, any more nominating, and I'll keep saying that until we get through this process and close it out. Make sense? Okay. So at this point, as chair and president of this branch, I am now opening up the nominating committee process. Are there any nominees? I recognize Nicole Pearson.
Good morning. I would like to nominate Jamel Johnson as a member of the nominating committee.
Thank you, Nicole. Are there any more nominations?
Yes,
No.
Madam President.
I need you to raise, is that Angelina?
Yes, unfortunately, I can't raise my hand when I'm sharing the screen.
Okay, Angelina, are you nominating someone?
Yes, I would like to nominate Adriana Brown.
Okay, thank you, Angelina. Are there any more nominations? Jamel Johnson, I recognize you.
Yes, I would like to nominate Nicole Pearson.
Thank you, Jamel. Are there any more nominations? I see Malachi Smith. Malachi?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Lorraine Moore.
Thank you, Malachi. Are there any more nominations?
Madam President, I'd like to nominate Malachi. This is Rory.
Thank you,
Madam
Rory.
President,
I would,
I
let me
move to
finish.
close
Oh,
nominations.
wait. Let me finish the movement. Rory Kaufman has
Oh, I'm
moved
sorry.
to
Nominated.
nominate, yeah, Malachi. Are there any more nominations?
Yes, Madam President, this is Troy. I'd like to nominate Malachi as well.
Okay, since he's already on the ballot, thank you. Are there any more nominations?
I move to close the nominations, Madam President.
Well, this is Velma, and I second that motion.
Okay, and it's been moved to close and properly second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? So move. Madam Secretary, can you name the 5 names of the nominating committee? Did we get 5?
Jamel,
Yes, we did.
Adriana,
Please name the ones that, because I may have to open it back up. Please name the names.
Jamel,
Okay,
Adriana,
okay,
Nicole,
okay,
Lorraine, and
okay.
Malachi.
okay, we did get 5. Teron, is your hand up because you have a question?
No, I was trying to put my hand down. Thank you.
Okay. The second action item says establish a supervisory committee, which will be 5. I read the bylaws, it automatically says 5, so we really don't have to vote on that. I thought it was just like the nominating committee, we had to choose the number between 5 and 15. But clearly, when I shared with you the process, it said 5 and no one from the executive committee. So we can bypass that. And so the next action item is to pay for delegates registration and rooms for the upcoming convention, state convention, which will be in Los Angeles this year. It will be held at the Los Angeles Marriott from October 21st to the 23rd. And so in order to have full participation, I like to, we had some delegates that have in the executive committee that have put their names forward. And I see under unfinished business, letter C, those names are before us. Betty Williams, Janice, I don't know how to pronounce Janice's last name, but Velma Sykes, Malachi Teron, Shirley Brown. Hold on, let me finish. Lynn Berkeley Baskin, Angelina, and Ardell Lamont Harrison are the names that were voted in.
Madam President, excuse me, but you need to take me off Shirley Brown. I had mentioned in the last meeting, our executive meeting, that I had mixed up the date and I won't be able to participate that one.
Okay, with that being said,
My name was left off. I was voted, I think, but my name was left off.
okay, can we please add Stacy's name on there?
I sure can.
And take Shirley Brown off.
Okay.
Thank you.
So at this time, I'm going to, let me finish this motion first and then I'll go to the next one. I'm going to entertain a motion that the first motion is the financial motion. So the first motion will be to accept, to pay for registration and hotel for the 8 delegates.
Madam President, I move that we accept the motion as laid on the floor.
Shirley Brown.
I second that motion.
It's been properly moved by Velma and second by Rory Kaufman. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. Second part of that motion would be the 8 delegates that were named. I am entertaining a motion that we move with the names that have been put forward in this meeting. That's the motion I'm entertaining for the 8 delegates.
So move for the 8 delegates that have been named for the ballot, ma'am.
Okay, thank you,
Madam
Rory.
President, this is Teron. I second that.
It's been probably moved by Rory and second by Teron. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. Second part of this delegates piece, we are allowed to have 8 alternates in the event one of the 8 delegates can't make it. However, we're not paying for alternates, they can come. However, if anyone drops out, those alternates would take their place and we would cover their registration and their room cost. So is anyone on this call interested in being an alternate for the state convention? Is that Nicole Pearson? Let's put her down as an alternate. Anyone else interested in being an alternate? And help me, Madam Secretaries, if I don't see hands raised. I don't see anyone else unless you guys do. Okay, for a matter of the record, we have one alternate, Nicole Pearson. And so I'm going to entertain a motion that we accept the name of, this is going to be a two-part motion, that we accept the name of Nicole Pearson of being an alternate. And if anyone else is interested in being an alternate, to contact the president. And then I will add those names accordingly prior to the convention. That's the motion that I have on the floor.
And Madam President, this is Tehran. I approve that motion.
It's been moved by Tehran. Do I have a second?
Seconded, Ardell.
Second, Roy.
Okay, it's been seconded by Ardell. Any discussion? Hearing none, so moved. Okay. We're just going, President's report, we're gonna bypass that because a lot of those things are on the agenda already. The only thing that I'm going to add, which some members have that information already, I did receive a call from the chief of police last night regarding a video that they released yesterday. They did allow me to see that video prior to it being released to the public, of a woman that was shot and killed in Del Paso Heights. She did attack the police officer with a knife. And with that, I didn't count the shots, but I did ask the chief of police how many shots were shot, and she said 9. So I'm still looking for more information about that. And as we get that additional information, I would share with you. The video I saw was the same one that everyone else saw, that I'm assuming that they did release yesterday. But I was told that I would get a more detailed video later, and I will share that information with the body once I receive that. Any questions or concerns about that one? It's sad all the way around, no matter what. Velma, can you give us an update on the R&B Festival?
Sure, thank you. The R&B Festival was held on September the 3rd at Southside Park. Let's see, we had our headliners were Blue Magic and, I'm sorry. Oh, shoot.
It is Blue Magic.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
And the
Delphonics.
And the
For some
Delphonics.
reason, I kept thinking maybe it was the Blue Notes, but no. It was.
It's okay, Velma.
Thank you. It was very well attended. It was the temperature did not get to what they were forecasting, so we had a very nice time. We had approximately 30 some vendors and non-food vendors, and 10 food vendors who all reported doing very well as far as commerce went. And it was, we had sponsors that gave positive feedback. There was quite a few media coverage involved, and our volunteers were excellent, and we just had an overall nice time in the community and for the community. I believe that's my report. Are there any questions?
No, it was a really great event, even in the heat. And it really wasn't that bad, really. We've had worse. So, and the trees, the park was great with all those trees. So it was a really, really good event. So Velma chaired that particular project. I'm not sure why she likes to take on that beating every year, but I thank her for it. And, it was a really good piece. At this time, before I go to,
Oh,
sure, go ahead, Roy, before I go to legal redress, and Lynn, be prepared for legal redress.
the statement is, first one I've ever missed in my life since I've been here. I'm so glad our branch, our president and Velma and Jamel made it happen with all the other great volunteers of the committee. God willing, I hope I'll be part of next year's. But I would like to say is we pulled off, you guys pulled off one of the greatest concerts in memory in this area. So I just want to give my respects to everybody in the committee, Jamel, Velma, and of course, Madam President. That's all. Hope I don't
And
miss next year.
Thank you
I
for
do,
that, Roy.
I do have one more comment.
Sure.
I do want to publicly acknowledge Jamel and Nicole for that excellent lineup.
It was an excellent lineup. The entertainment was off the chain this year. So thank you for doing that. At this time, we're going to go to the next agenda item, which is the legal redress. And in the meantime, I need one of the secretaries to send the election manual to those 5 people who were nominated. So let's make sure, one, that I documented that I requested that you send them the election manual. And 2, that everyone that's on the nominating committee, put your email in the chat so that Stacy can make sure that she has your correct email so that she can send the 2022 election manual, so you'll have that. Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you, Madam President. On the 3rd Saturdays of every month, we host an expungement and legal redress clinic. Justin Ward is our legal redress chair, and he and several of the attorneys from the Public Defender's Office, and of course, we have some long-standing attorneys who attend and who have been supportive of the NAACP legal redress for years. We are all there every Saturday, every 3rd Saturday, from 10 o'clock to noon. We do encourage people to make sure that they fill out their formal complaint online before they attend. And if you don't, we're certainly welcome. We'll certainly give you the link when you arrive. It's been going well, but we sure could help a lot more people if people would get the word out.
Thank you. And we plan on doing some advertisement on 97.5 about that event as well. So thank you for sharing about the legal redress piece. And so next on the agenda is actually the state convention, which we mentioned already. So it's in LA, and so we have our delegates. Can you scroll down and make sure you add Stacy's name to that piece for the delegates? I said scroll down. What happened to the agenda? Can we bring the agenda back up, please? Okay.
Angelina, please bring it.
Okay, so also under unfinished business, just to bring you up to date, the 11-year-old with the excessive force and detained without the parents at Cal Expo on Children's Day. The last time I reported that I had a meeting scheduled with the general manager, Rick Pickering, myself, and Tanya Faison of Black Lives Matter of Sacramento. At the last minute, I think the day before, maybe even the morning of, they didn't cancel the meeting. What they said that they would only meet with me and not with Tanya. For me, I don't believe in dividing the Black community. Black Lives Matter actually invited us into this situation where we were able to talk to the parents and the young man. They do have an attorney, and so they are moving forward with the lawsuit. However, what I wanted to go over were their guidelines, their training. Why was the parent never allowed into the room with the 11-year-old, and they had him sign a document saying that he was barred from the property of Cal Expo. He didn't even know what he was signing. So I'm disappointed, although since then, the general manager has attempted to reach out to me on my personal cell phone, and we just haven't connected yet. But I believe in our community, Black community, not being divided, and no one telling me who can come to a meeting and who can't, especially when you agreed and knew she was coming. So I don't do that. And so I canceled the meeting until further notice. So I wanted to give you an update on that. Any questions?
Madam President Saran, I
Yes,
just want to
Ron.
publicly say that you have great, impeccable character, and I do believe that we should all be standing together for the common good of our community. So big kudos and heads up to you.
Madam
Thank you,
President,
Teron.
same thing. I echo that. We need to stand together as a unified body, respects to what you've just done.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
Betty,
Yes,
can they have him, make him sign any documents at 11 years old?
they can. That is a violation of his civil rights per his attorney. So no. So no. CPS, we don't have a follow-up meeting yet. I know we are working on a second follow-up meeting on making some changes. Lynn is part of that. The chief of police is part of that, director of CPS. Probation is part of that. Public defender's office is also part of that big meeting and changing. We got some real issues when it comes to CPS, where 40% of African Americans, young people, stay into that system longer than anybody else. And it's crazier than crazy. And so we're working through that. We have some things that we're hoping to change as far as at the local level, and possibly putting in some changes at the state level. Yes, Lynn.
If I could just ask too, if people have experiences, negative experiences with CPS, please fill out the form online. We do have forms online, complaint forms, and we would like to document to see if we can find a pattern. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm wearing my t-shirt of the Oak Park Black Film Festival. If you haven't went, do we have a flyer on that? I'm not sure if we do or not. You should. It's the go out and support the Black filmmakers. I've been to 2 of them already, and I think it ends on Sunday. Yeah, the 11th, the 7th through the 11th. Go. The tickets are $10. At the end, you actually meet the producers, and it's just awesome. We saw the story last night of Harold Washington, the first Black mayor of Chicago. We had our own Deion Taylor show his upcoming movie called Fear. That's going to be a scary one. And some of his other things, but it had the chance to meet those individuals. So if you're not doing anything this weekend, or you're looking for something to do after church on Sunday, please go out and support. And those producers and writers, they are so excited when they walk into that theater and see all of us in there supporting their film. It's interesting. And so I'm not going to tell you about the film I saw on Thursday night, because I'm still recovering from that one. But oh Jesus, but they were all good. They were all good.
Young talent. Remember the young talent, Betty. I heard stories.
And
remember the young talented young lady whose film we got to, whose short we got to see last night, and she was
right.
young.
What was her name, Velma?
Well, now listen.
Yes, there was another. There was like 3 films that I saw yesterday, and at the end of each one, they host a reception at Fixins with food, and last night the Fixins reception, they focus on a certain food each night, and last night was chicken wing night, so they must have knew I was coming. So it was all about the chicken wings and other things, but it was a great event. So please go out and support, and thank you for showing that information and getting that out there. But yes, support the Black Film Festival. So now we're going to get ready and go into our town hall. God, 10:59. So as we are preparing for our town hall, I would like the secretaries to prepare for the Facebook Live. If we have, because we would like all the community to see this piece. And so I'm going, while Stacy, who's responsible? Oh, you got it. Okay, it is now 11 o'clock. And we are going into the Greater Sacramento NAACP Townhall presentation, which is two parts today. And so the first part of our presentation is going to be with the SMUD board, and our host and the person that's handling this piece is our own Lynn Berkeley Bascom. And so I'm going to hand it over to Lynn to lead the first half hour of this piece. Lynn?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time, and so that we can make sure our speakers share everything they know with us in 29 minutes or less. So we have three speakers today. We have Greg Fishman. And if you want to raise your hand so that people can see you, Greg, great. And we have Rosanna Herbert. And there you are, Rosanna. And we have Jose Bedipo Memba. Is that right? Did I pronounce it per? Oh, yay. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I'm going to let each of you give us a really quick bio and introduce yourself. And I think we're going to start with Rosanna and Greg, and that's my understanding. And then we'll move it to Jose to kind of drill down on options for everyone. So Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to this group and to share a little bit about SMUD, myself, and specifically what SMUD is doing relative to our 2030 zero carbon goal and our sustainable communities program, which is something that Jose heads up, and he'll kind of take a deeper dive into that in just a minute. Briefly about myself, I've been on the board for almost 8 years, have a long history in the energy field. I was a public information officer at SMUD for a while, and I worked at the California ISO. That's been in the news this past week quite a bit. I was there for almost 10 years. And as I said, I've been on the SMUD board now for about 8 years. What we're doing with the 2030 goal is really important, and I'm going to take just a couple of minutes and then turn it over to Rosanna for her introduction. We are trying to get to carbon zero, meaning no carbon from our power plants, from our fleet, and we're helping our customers do the same thing by the year 2030. This is an incredibly aggressive goal. It's our moonshot goal, as we call it. And we need to bring our community along with us. And that's why these conversations are so important. We want to make sure that you know what we're doing and why we're doing it, and how you can help and how we can help you as we make this transition. So right now, about 50% of SMUD's power comes from renewable resources, or things that at least don't produce carbon. We have a hydroelectric system. We have a wind farm. We have a lot of different solar farms around the area. And we purchase power from other renewable resources as well. We have a little bit of hydroelectric. We even harvest the methane gas from the manure pools at dairies and use that to burn in our power plants. But we also rely on natural gas-fired power plants for about half of our power. And our goal is to reduce that down over the next 7 or 8 years as much as we possibly can, hopefully to absolute zero. But we're going to do that, and as we mothball those plants, we're not going to just take them apart or throw them away. We're going to leave them in good working order. So if we need them, as we have seen this past week, every resource available was needed, we will still be able to call on those plants. We're also looking at some really innovative technologies, things like can we burn a certain amount of hydrogen in some of those power plants instead of natural gas, which would reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that they produce? Can we refuel them with some other fuel that also is carbon zero or carbon neutral? So there's a lot of innovative technologies that we're looking at. We think with the existing technology we have, we can get there about 90% of the way to our goal. But that last 10% is what's still up in the air, and relying on technologies that we're still investigating and doing some R&D with. I guess I would tell you the other important part of this is we absolutely need to bring our customers along with us. And so we are focusing additional incentives on electrifying transportation, so buying electric vehicles and making those charging stations more available to you, and also electrifying your homes and your businesses, changing out when the time is right, when you need a new water heater, we want you to buy an electric one instead of a natural gas. When you need to get a new stove or oven, we want you to buy an electric one instead of natural gas. And so along with that, as we ask you to electrify more and more of your life, we understand implicitly that we need to keep our rates low and we need to keep the lights on, keep the power flowing. And so it's a balance and it's a struggle. And like I said, the pathway is fairly clear forward up to about 90% of the way. And that final 10% is what we're still investigating. But, and so as Jose will tell you in a minute, the Sustainable Communities program is part of the way that we're providing incentives to underserved communities, especially to bring them along with us, because we really can't afford to leave anybody behind. I'm going to stop there for now and turn it over to Rosanna for an introduction and anything that she'd like to add to what I'm sure I missed a few points. Rosanna, up to you, and then I'll certainly stick around and answer questions and things after Jose.
Great. Well, I want to say it's always hard to go after Greg Fishman because he's so doggone articulate. He tells you everything you need to know. But I want to say thank you for allowing me to be here. I know many of you. I used to work for Kim Mueller. And then I went to work for SMUD for 20 years in community relations and government affairs. So I know Betty and I know Velma and I know a lot of the other folks out there. And I want you to know that everything that Greg has said is accurate, that we're really pushing to go zero carbon, but we are making sure that we're bringing everybody along with us. And the other aspect to this that Greg didn't mention is the workforce development. You know, when you are pushing for zero carbon and you're asking folks to change out their hot water heater, change out their HVAC system, maybe have solar built in the neighborhood, those kinds of things are all creating jobs for the young people in our community. And SMUD is working very diligently to make sure that the new jobs that are going to be created through the new Inflation Reduction Act, that those folks are well trained and that everybody is involved in those communities. So we're looking at the workforce development in underserved communities. We're going to make sure that this large moonshot to go zero carbon is going to produce new jobs, and we're going to make sure that all communities go along at the same time. One thing that I have worked very diligently on at SMUD is our diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect. And, you know, we rewrote the policy. So SMUD now has a new focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we hired a new diversity, equity, and inclusion director. So bottom line, you know, SMUD is owned by all of us. And people like Greg and myself and Jose, we're there to make sure that SMUD serves all communities. And we want to make sure that your community has all the advantages as the other communities do. So that's one reason why we're here today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jose.
Thank you, Director Herber and Director Fishman. Really appreciate your leadership. The only reason why SMUD's able to do any of this work is we have a board and leaders like Director Fishman and Director Herber who have a true commitment to our customers, and particularly to customers who've been left out of a lot of the conversation. So this conversation specifically with NAACP today is very personal to me, because the reality of this discussion about carbon zero is that communities where African Americans live historically have been those that have been facing the most environmental impacts. And because of those impacts, we've seen effects related to education, health, lifespan, and jobs, as Director Herbert just referenced. So as we're having this conversation with all the pressures that we're facing, the reason why this is so important from our perspective for the NAACP is this is an opportunity to help African Americans in the Sacramento County, one, improve their quality of life, but not just from a health standpoint, but from a workforce standpoint and an opportunity standpoint. And so that's why, as we talked about before, our sustainable communities effort is really focused on using partnerships like with the NAACP and other community groups to help us do the work together and also make sure we're here to listen. So when I'm done with my quick little presentation, I really want to hear more about what we can do to meet folks where they are. But one of the key parts of this process is we want to ensure that no communities are left behind, one, but two, that every community is included and can activate and grow from this process. So we went ahead and did a whole year of community meetings, and we heard some messages. One, we need to make sure these messages that we're sending out are more simplified and community focused. We need to make sure that there were real jobs that are generated that folks could attain. We need to make sure that we provide some cultural connections, because the reality is the impacts on different cultures and communities are different. And we need to understand that and meet folks where they are. So I'm really appreciative of folks opening the door for us to talk today. And we want to make sure that small businesses are beneficiaries of the changes that we're making, and that ultimately all community partnerships can move forward. So our three real focuses as a part of this process is that we've developed a community impact strategy related to the 2030 plan. In that community impact strategy,
Jose, you're on mute.
yes, it says the host muted me. So hopefully I didn't say something wrong there. But what I was trying to refer is we are doubling our community contributions to focus on three key things: affordability, equitable access, and community engagement. And really, as a part of that doubling of our efforts financially and time-wise, is really extending opportunities for partnerships with groups like the NAACP to make sure that we're reaching folks. And when Director Fishman talked about making improvements from an infrastructure standpoint, that we provide job training, that we provide career training from the kindergarten level all the way up into the technical training in the college and universities. So there's going to be some opportunities in the near term, and I want to talk about one specific one that we just recently completed. We were working with the Greater Sacramento Urban League on a Powering Career Partnerships, where we exclusively were focused on recruitment in historically African-American and Latinx communities. We're able to bring in 20 individuals from that recruitment process to go through an intensive training, and we're able to hire on 6 of those individuals, really helping, one, address the DEIB concerns that Director Herbert referenced, but really providing an opportunity for individuals to change their family's futures with a great high-paying job. The best part about this process is it's not just about jobs and SMUD, but there's new innovation that's coming to Sacramento related to all of this clean power creation. So we're talking about energy storage jobs, the California Mobility Center. And the reality is this is our opportunity to make sure that we're not left behind, but even more so that we're creating new businesses, new business owners within African-American community, within the Latinx community, within communities of color throughout Sacramento. So we're really excited about this partnership. Happy to share more information. I put information about the 2030 plan inside the chat. And the Sustainable Communities effort too also offers a Sustainable Communities Priorities Map, which you can all use as well. It's been leveraged for organizations to help gain funding from the federal and state level, because it provides real quantitative data. And we're excited that in the 4th quarter of this year, we're gonna have even more data related to age, race, gender, orientation, so that we can make sure we really understand where gaps might be. So I wanna make sure, again, we maximize the time for Q&A, but that's just a high level of some of the work we're doing. We have 139 active partnerships that are long-term, and we're hoping to expand that even more and more with folks like the ones on this call. So really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, President Williams, for your leadership, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Jose and Greg and Rosanna, we do have in the chat, Director Fishman mentioned burning hydrogen. Doesn't that produce nitrogen oxide, which is an even stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide? This is from Chris Jones. Question. Oh, Greg, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. My understanding is that burning hydrogen actually does not produce greenhouse gases, but it does produce particulate matter. So it's not without its impact, but it can be used judiciously in some ways. And the other thing is I personally my wife and I just recently purchased a hydrogen vehicle. It's a Hyundai Nexo. So SMUD can start using some of the excess wind and solar power that we have at times when those are producing a lot of energy, and create hydrogen, and then either use it in our power plants conceivably, or sell it or use it in our own fleets for vehicles and other uses. So it's another way that we're looking to store energy, which is a big piece of this puzzle. As we, the 2030 carbon plan calls for greatly expanding our wind and solar capacity. And along with that goes that sometimes you're producing more than you actually need. Sometimes, obviously, at night, solar doesn't produce, wind doesn't always blow. So the ability to store that energy in some capacity is another big part of the 2030 zero carbon plan. So, Chris, I'm not a scientist. My understanding is it does produce particulate matter, but not greenhouse gases. It's still an issue, right? There's still problems to overcome, but it can help us in some ways.
Thank you, Greg. Jose, did you want to add something?
Well, I was just going to say again, I'm not a scientist either, but one of the key things about this plan is a lot of the technologies that we need to get to that 2030 zero carbon haven't been developed yet. So there's some opportunities again, as we're exploring it, all the best opportunities. Energy storage is a key space, like Director Fishman just mentioned before. If we're able to capture that energy that we're generating from wind and be able to cultivate that or expand batteries, we have an opportunity not just to create a more sustainable context for our customers, but there's new jobs as a part of that, new businesses that are going to be developed to do that work. And there's an opportunity right now, particularly within historically underserved communities, to capitalize on that. And that's why our curriculum of the work that we do right now in the schools is tied towards that. So this last year we did we reached about 20,000 students, primarily in Title I schools in Sacramento County. And the whole purpose of that is to improve those core competencies to be able to build towards those job opportunities.
Thanks, Jose. Rosanna, you want to say something quickly so I can get to Velma?
Well, I was just going to answer the second part of Chris's question, and that is a great question. And
if you could hold on, Rosanna, just a second so I can read it out loud for everyone. Also, what are the plans for SMUD to recycle old solar panels, provide recycling service to private owners? That's the question from Chris, and then we'll go to Velma after you've answered, Rosanna.
Okay, great. Well, Chris, it's a wonderful question. And the truth of the matter is, we don't have the answer yet. Everybody who has a solar system is responsible for their solar system. And I know that there's quite a bit of work going on in the legislature to make the solar companies who make the panels be responsible for the recycling, but it's not happening yet. And it is something that SMUD continues to look at. And that's it.
Thank you, Rosanna. I appreciate it. Velma Sykes.
Hi, and thank you guys for being here and sharing this information. Hi, Rosanna. Good to see you. It's very important information. I was privileged to participate in this program through the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Control, where I was able to get a grant to purchase an electric vehicle. And but my concerns are, and unfortunately that program to me wasn't widespread, enough for us to be able to participate. I did what I could when I found out for myself, but I just found out for myself and spread the information. However, we are where we are now, and I do have a vehicle, and my concern is that are there going to be, I know you guys are going to address trying to put more more charging stations in our communities because they are very few. But I live in a multi-family dwelling. I live in a condo, and there's no opportunity for charging stations to be placed in those type of dwellings. And part of the program that I participated in, if I were in a place where I could have a charger, it would have been provided for me. So to me, that's a slight for our community because, as you know, a lot of us do live in multifamily dwellings. In other communities, I have seen where the charging stations are placed in community parks or places that are more convenient for us as a community to get to if we're not able to get to them in our own, at our own homes. Are there going to be, is how are you going to address availability and access to charging stations for us as we move as we're being pushed literally into this phase of by 2030?
Let me start, and then I'm going to ask Jose to fill in the blanks because I know there's a lot of detailed information. Velma, it's a great question, and frankly, providing SMUD's benefits that aside from the electricity, I mean, all of the programs that we offer for energy efficiency, for vehicle charging, for solar power, all of those things are that much more difficult to apply to multifamily dwellings because obviously you're dealing with a landlord who may be remote, doesn't, may not be all that involved in the community, lots of different residents who have different needs and different customs. So it is hard. We recognize that. We are dealing with that. I believe there was some state money to help do that, some of it should be coming to SMUD. And I'm going to let Jose pick it up here too, because Jose, please also talk about the mobility hubs that we're doing. I know that's on the top of your head.
No, I appreciate that. And it's a great question, Velma. To your point, as a part of our community impact strategy, one of the key target areas is focusing programs in units and multifamily developments. The mobility hub that Director Fishman just referenced, we are launching a mobility hub in Del Paso Heights. Actually, the groundbreaking should be sometime in the fourth quarter, right adjacent to a multifamily unit in Del Paso Heights, about 2 blocks away from the high school. We have additional grant funding that we're going after at a federal level to plant those mobility hubs throughout Sacramento County, with the focus being on communities that have been historically left out. And the whole goal of those hubs is to have those in public spaces. We additionally been working with low income multifamily programs, including mutual housing and Habitat for Humanity, and have installed already some multi-unit charging stations. What I'd love to be able to do offline is get an understanding of where you are and let you know if we have a pilot coming that way. But we have funding right now for 4 more community hubs in the next 3 years, and we're looking to get more. The key thing with our community impact strategy, we're making a commitment of over $13 million towards this type of effort so we can have the infrastructure in historically disadvantaged communities. We're looking to double that investment with our grants opportunities. So we actually put together a grant strategies team so we can get federal and state grants to match those dollars. The last thing I'd add, I'm sure Director Herbert might have something to add as well, is that one of the reasons why we leverage our map that we developed, our GIS map, is we've actually used that to identify those gaps. It shows where all the EV structures are located and identifies key areas in our community that have been left out. We've taken that map all the way to DC. In fact, we're going as a part of the Congressional Black Caucus in September to meet with the Department of Energy. And they've told us that 40% of all of their federal grants are all going towards equity focused efforts like this. So for multifamily, low income, underserved communities, disadvantaged communities, that will be that focus. So we're taking it all the way to DC to make sure we bring that money back to Sacramento so that you can more actively participate. So that launch hub is going in October, and I'll let Director Herbert close the door on this. We have more coming in different areas, focused on Oak Park, focused on Arden. Director Herbert, I'll let you close us out there.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that folks know that it's not SMUD itself that is deciding where chargers go and where money is spent. There's a coalition of our general manager at SMUD and the general manager of the Air Quality Management District and the city manager and the county executive. They're all working together to draw down as much money as possible from the state and the feds to be able to do this in our community. It just so happens that SMUD is very well respected and we do have great community connections. But I want you to know that we're all working together to bring as much money as we can into the community. And while SMUD might kind of be in a leadership role, all this money is we're not the ones doing all the installing and making all the decisions. It's being done in a larger consortium.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Rosa.
do want to add that I was awarded, because the electric charging stations do cost in many places. There are some free. But I was also awarded a $2,000 credit. I believe it came from SMUD to pay for that charging if needed. But I have been fortunate to find free charging stations in my neighborhood. So I do want to add that as well, but it is concerning because those things I sought out on my own and found out, and not everybody will have, the information. We try to get out as much information as we can through the NAACP, but we definitely depend on our partners like SMUD to get us that information so that we can get it out to our community. So I truly appreciate you guys being here today to do this, but just wanted to bring up some of the concerns that I have found as a electric vehicle owner.
Thank you, Velma. Appreciate it. I do have a final quick question, and we'll close it out with this because we only have about 3 minutes. Really quick. Recently, the NAACP has advocated for Black restaurant owners because they were left out of distributions for ARPA funding from the county. So now these restaurant owners are having to change, it sounds like, their restaurant equipment because oftentimes it's gas. So will there be help for those restaurant owners?
I'll go first again. First, I want to make sure you understand. These are the city and county ordinances that are requiring electrification on new construction and new buildings. There has been a lot of talk about will they then start requiring retrofits of existing restaurants. I think that's another hurdle to cross, and obviously that's a big expense. In answer to your question, Lynn, oh, gosh, I sure hope so. I don't know specifically of any fund. Maybe Jose does, but believe me, we hear this from the Asian community too, because some of them, the wok cooking in particular, they rely on very high heat that they get from natural gas burners, and where it's funny, the city manager Howard Chan hears about it a lot from the Asian community, but and so does SMUD's general manager Paul Lau, both of Chinese extraction. Having said that, I hope so, and maybe Jose has some other details.
I do, and I really appreciate that being brought up. Number one is that, like Director Fishman said, the city and the county ordinance doing that, but there is a moratorium in place right now. So the changeover does not have to occur anytime over the next 3 years. So any restaurant owners that believe that they have to turn and transition, they're already grandfathered in. I think number two, we actually are working with the city of Sacramento right now on a feasibility study to do evaluations and analysis on how we can train and transition equitably restaurant owners of color from gas to electric without impacting the quality and the cultural components of that in the API community, in the African American community, in the Latinx community, and in other communities that have, again, a strong connection to non-electric cooking. That actual grant is being developed right now and should be completed. The feasibility study should be completed in January. And that information will be generating dollars from the federal government to be able to help with that transition. So we're continuing to work on that collaboratively.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to give Rosanna the last word here.
Okay, well, I'm just going to say that Greg and Jose did a great job today of filling in all of the information that you need. I just want to remind you that SMUD belongs to all of us. Each and every one of us own SMUD. And Greg and Jose and I want to make sure that all of our customer owners get to take advantage of the great programs that SMUD offers. We're here for you. Please call on us. And thanks again for having us.
Thank you so much, Rosanna Herbert, Greg Fishman, Jose Budipo Memba. Thank you all from SMUD. And I'll turn it over to Betty Williams, President.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you everyone from SMUD for that presentation. It is a concern in our community, especially since we're talking about 11 years of gasless cars. Is that correct? 11 years, it's not that far away. And it's going to impact our community more than ever. And I would like to be a greater partner with SMUD. So I'm hoping that we can continue these type of conversations and getting this information out in our various events and to educate our community. And so I felt like we hadn't done a very good job when it came to our partnership with SMUD. So I'm so glad that this happened. So thank you. So as you know, we're on Zoom as well as Facebook Live. So the audience is not just us. It's on Zoom. We are Facebook Live. So we're hoping the information that that's being shared today is beyond the number of people that are on Zoom. And so with that being said, we're going to our part 2 of the town hall, which is Measure O. And so we have 2 representatives from Measure O, pro and con, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, Daniel Conway and Kendra Lewis, that will be presenting on each side of the piece. This Measure O is going to be on our ballot, the local ballot. So you're going to have a ballot with a number of propositions that's coming from the state, and then you're going to have some information that's local, which is considered measures. And so this is Measure O. And so I am going to start with Kendra to introduce herself, and then to Daniel to introduce himself. And then I'll go back to Daniel to start his presentation, and then Kenya. But the introductions first.
Still morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Betty and members of the NAACP. My name is Kendra Lewis, and I am the Executive Director of the Sacramento Housing Alliance, as well as the Housing Alliance is a member of the No on O committee. So I'm representing the committee as well as my organization.
Thank you. Daniel?
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all this morning. I'm here on behalf of the Yes on Measure O campaign. I'm the chairman of that campaign and the proponent of the ballot measure. So really just appreciate the chance to speak with you all and really look forward to an engaging conversation.
Excellent. Before you start, Daniel, you'll be doing the first presentation, but I just want to make sure with the secretaries that they have the ability, if need be, if they wanted to share anything, a PowerPoint or anything, that you'll have that ability. So Stacy and Angelina, if they need to share information, let's make sure that that happens. So Danielle, we'll start with you and your presentation, then we'll go to Kendra, and then we'll go back and do the summary, and then open it up for questions.
All right, thank you so much, Betty. And to begin, I just appreciate everyone making time on a Saturday morning. I came straight here from coaching a bunch of second graders on a soccer field, so I apologize that I'm dressed more like a coach than someone on a campaign. But just really wanted to spend a few minutes with you all talking about Measure O, kind of how we got here and why I think it's so important that we support this ballot measure. And ultimately, I would love for the NAACP to endorse us. Obviously, you guys are a powerful, well-respected voice in our community. And so I think having you guys join our coalition would send an important message to our entire community. To begin with Measure O, I'm going to say some things that I think everyone knows, which is homelessness is really a crisis that our community has been dealing with for at least 5 years now. And in that time, we've really seen just a dramatic downward spiral in our community, where we're letting some of the neediest people in Sacramento live and die on our streets. And we've seen the data that supports that, right? That since 2019, we've seen a 67% increase in homelessness. And I think it's important to note that the data also shows just the disproportionate impacts that homelessness has in our community, right? You see a disproportionate number of African Americans living on the streets. You see veterans living on the streets. You see formerly incarcerated people living on the streets. You see former foster youth living on the streets. And you see a disproportionate number of LGBTQ youth living on the streets. And so many of these communities are people who we say we care about, we say we want to help, and yet somehow we don't provide the necessary services, programs, and infrastructure that they need. And so for our coalition, we recognized, earlier this year that something had to be done, that the status quo was failing everyone in Sacramento, whether you were unhoused or housed, and that we needed to find a way to take a first step, not a last step, but a first step towards addressing this crisis. And so fundamentally, it's a fairly simple proposal, which is to say we need to provide shelter at scale so that people who are living on the streets have somewhere that's safe and secure to go. We need to provide services that complement that shelter. And we also need to have an expectation and a reality of safe and accessible public spaces that are enjoyable for everyone, again, whether you're unhoused or housed. And we've heard for too long, and we've seen far too many media reports about how this has affected our community, how people no longer feel safe walking their dog, taking their kids to the park, people find needles, people are exposed to violence and things like that. And this is not just housed people, but unhoused people. I mean, living in an encampment is often dangerous. And again, unfortunately, the data has bore that out for all of us. So like I said, our plan, basically what it does is it creates a requirement for the city to create shelter. And it requires the city to then, once that shelter is available, it requires the city to then systematically go about addressing encampments and letting people know that there's safer, better places for them to go, but that we no longer allow people to just live outside and die outside in Sacramento. And so this would really make Sacramento a leader in California in terms of addressing this crisis systematically. And I think that that's something that we're all excited about. And our measure at this point is supported by the business community, by labor groups, numerous community groups, neighborhood groups. I mean, I'll say, the building trades, the Metro Chamber, we have a variety of groups, and I'll mention that Jacob Vitale, who's also with the campaign, is on here. So if I miss something, I'm sure Jacob will remind me. But the point is, we've built a broad-based coalition because, frankly, this is not something we need to explain to people. We don't need to convince anyone that this is a crisis. What we need to convince people is that there's something that can be done. I think the other thing that is important to note with Measure O is, for the first time, it creates a real sense of urgency for our elected officials and policymakers to actually do something about this crisis, right? I think all of us know, Betty's been in some of these conversations, but I mean, we've seen that there's a lot of finger pointing on this issue, right? Between the city, between the county, between the local government, the state government, and that finger pointing leads to nothing. It leads to this status quo that we see. And so we feel like this is a significant first step. Like I said, not a complete step, but a first step towards addressing this crisis. I think the other thing I want to mention, and I'll kind of just wrap up my opening comments because I feel like this is much better to have a dialogue around. But I think the other thing I want to acknowledge is that we absolutely need to do something about housing in Sacramento, right? I think it's getting increasingly expensive for anyone to find a place to live, but particularly for people who, work in the service industry, work in the hospitality industry, work for the state, work for the county. It's getting harder and harder to just afford to live here. And I think that has a real impact on homelessness, but just everyone's quality of life. And I think what we've seen here in California is that our housing production model is broken, right? We've seen numerous efforts at the state legislature to figure out innovative ways to develop new housing. And frankly, those efforts have just not gone far enough. And I think it's also important to note that when it comes to affordable housing specifically, that's another model that is just proven to be broken. You know, you can find numerous media reports of stories about affordable housing developments where someone's trying to build 30 units and it ends up taking them, you know, 6-7 years and cost over $500,000 a unit to produce. And so while Measure O does not fix that, our goal here is to kind of really start this conversation, start a sea change in our policies and our way that we approach these things so that we can systematically start to address all of these issues. Again, beginning with shelter because we can't let people live and die outside, focusing on services because we need to give people the help that they need, and focusing on creating public spaces that are safe and accessible to everyone. So that's our goal here. We feel really good just based on polling that we've seen, based on conversations we've had with the community. We think that this is something that the folks in Sacramento are ready to embrace. But like I said at the beginning, we also really want to see the NAACP be a part of this effort moving forward. So with that, I will end my opening comments. Again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Daniel. Next we will have presenting is Kendra Lewis. Kendra?
Great, thank you. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation about Measure O because one of the fundamental things that the coalition in our organization is very clear about is no on O. Just to understand, there's a little bit of history as it relates to how we got here. And so basically there was a plan that was designed that has been presented in several spaces that cities like Los Angeles and the county did not support. The city of Sacramento actually is in this position because they've had to come up with a plan because there was a campaign and signatures initially that for another measure that actually we were very much against that really would have caused even more criminalization of homelessness. And so we're here today to really talk about Emergency Shelter and Enforcement Act, which is Measure O. The Sacramento Housing Alliance, first and foremost, we believe housing is a human right. Shelter is not housing. It is fundamentally not housing. Sheltering people because they're on the streets is not an answer for the housing crisis that we're in. And I would also, I just want to even go to the fact that there are many, housing is extremely complicated. The issues are complicated, but what we are at with Measure O is we fundamentally believe that it will cause more resources because of the ordinance that will have to be implemented by law enforcement. The Sacramento Police Union is supporting yes on O, and it is of concern. My organization, as well as several organizations that are partner like Organized SAC, the ACLU, and many other organizations, SAC Act, have come together to say this is not the answer. To criminalize people being on the street is not the answer. People shouldn't be in tents. I think we all can agree. We can agree that the numbers are extraordinarily high and there's a lot of complications to why we don't have enough housing. We don't have enough housing because housing is not affordable. And the affordable housing crisis is not a failure. In fact, it is the one standing the one standing post-pandemic housing that has prevented so many people from being displaced, from being evicted because of corporate landlords who are now focused on a zero-sum game. And so the concern of this is that more people will be on the streets. The city does not have a plan for housing, shelter, or services. So all this is going to do is give an opportunity to round up people, put them in shelters temporarily, and criminalize being housing. One of the other fundamental things that we that has stood out against, that we stand against, is that none of the housing organizations were ever even approached to even have a conversation about how to solve this problem. This measure has been designed by the city and by those that are supporting yes on O. None of the housing organizations were ever approached to really have a sound conversation. And so when the mayor had stated the city a year ago and talked about housing as a human right as a solution, yes, but the solution is not to just round up people and get them off the street. The solution is to have a plan, a larger plan. And so one of the issues that, one of the things we tried to do with this measure, because we are very concerned about it being a civil rights violation, is Measure O. The Sacramento Housing Alliance specifically filed in court to stop it. We did not win. It was just a few weeks ago that the judge allowed for it to go forward. Basically, we were trying to get a judgment to pull it off the ballot because we think it will do harm. We know it will do harm. And so what we want community members to understand about why Measure O is really going to do more harm for our community, because it is not going to solve the fact that we don't have enough housing in our region. If anybody has been a part of the housing element process, which is the general plan, of which we very specifically did work on, of which the city of Sacramento was one of the leaders in the region on having an actual plan going forward. This actually there is a plan for more housing, but there has to be more funding, and there has to be some more advocacy in our region for actual housing. Sheltering people is not housing. And that's one of the problems, that people are constantly on the streets as it relates to the unhoused. The other issue is this is going to cause a lot of lawsuits. So the city, the purpose of this is to get people off the streets, but the concern is also that there'll be endless lawsuits against the city. And so why continue to use resources for lawsuits versus coming together to solve a problem? The average cost for the city's average cost $75 per person for 600 spaces. And these are shelters, which cost $45,000 a day, 1.35 million a month. The city is only obligated to $5 million annually. Is the county going to offer the difference? Probably not. There's no guarantee. Yes, the city and the county are talking, but that is not being done in the public sector. That is all being done between the city and the county, and the public has had absolutely no input on those discussions, nor have nonprofit organizations or anybody else. That is a concern as well. And so as we talk about the crisis, we talk about fundamentally, why are we here? We have a housing crisis because we have a history in the state of California, and this reason, of discrimination, redlining, and racism. And the housing crisis is only getting worse because we have not solved the biggest elephant in the room, is trying to remedy the history of these wrongs. And so we're standing up today to say no on Measure O, consider coming back. Let's work with the city and the county and the business sector for a real plan for Sacramento's housing crisis, and get people off the street and allow them affordable housing. For anybody to have a rent, I just want to close with this, because we're going to talk about what options are. The average person has to make $31.25 just to pay $1,625 in rent. I know for a fact, because we've gotten calls, people can't even find a place with a $2,500 HUD voucher. So we have a crisis and we have a problem, but the answer is not to criminalize people, because more and more people will be on the streets because of so many other factors in our region that we need to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, this is where we're going to go. We're going to have a quick 2-minute, well, I think I put on there, I can't even remember now, like 1 to 2 minute summary. Kendra a summary, and then Daniel a summary, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. And then immediately after Q&A, our admin folks is going to bring up a voting mechanism where participants on this call will be able to vote up and down whether you would support Measure O. Kendra.
Okay, so 2 minutes to summarize why.
Yeah.
No. Okay, thank you. So in summary, I am appealing to the NAACP and its members to vote no on O. This is not a solution to the housing crisis that we're in at this point, and we need something that's better than this. Let's come together. vote no, and let's come together for a real plan. This is only going to cause more issues around civil rights violations, delineate more resources, and cause a bigger problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Daniel.
Thank you, Betty. And again, thank you all for joining this morning. And just to reiterate, we're here because we want to earn your support for Measure O. I just want to clarify a few things that were said. To begin with, as we were drafting this measure, we actually did reach out to all sorts of members of this community, including, well-known advocates like Bob Erlenbush and Joe Smith. And we always had very much an open door policy, because I think Sacramento is at its best when we are communicating and we are collaborative. And so I think obviously we might not all agree on kind of how we got here, but I think especially assuming Measure O passes, I think there's going to be a chance for all of us to work together as a community to make sure that we really make the most out of this opportunity. I also just want to mention that, to the extent that we want to say that housing is the solution, I think ultimately we absolutely need more housing in Sacramento. But I think, as we all know, it takes 5, 6, 7 years to build housing at scale. And right now we have a situation where we've got, 3 or 4 people dying every week living on the streets. And so I and my coalition are just not comfortable continuing to let people die and try to survive on the streets while we figure out how to build housing in our community. I also think it's important to note that, Kendra mentioned that, in fact, yes, the police union is supporting this measure. But if you talk to them, it's because they feel like social workers should be doing this work, and that too often they're put on the front lines. And so I think we need to get to a model where the social workers are doing social work and police officers can stay in their lane. And as far as criminalizing homelessness, this certainly isn't that. I mean, this is about offering shelter and services. I think what's criminal, again, is letting people die on our street. And the last thing I would say, Kendra mentioned the lawsuit that her group tried to have. Part of our goal here, frankly, is to let the people of Sacramento have a voice in finding solutions. And so this is the power of democracy, right? Is to have a process where people get a voice, and forums like this are where we can talk these things through. But I think lawsuits that block action just lead to more of the status quo. So again, thank you all, and really look forward to your questions.
Okay, at this point, we're going to open it up for questions for either Kendra or Daniel or both. And secretaries, help me look for hands up or questions in the chat as well. Oh, I do see. Okay, it's time for me to put on my glasses, y'all. Okay, from Chris. It's my understanding that the Measure O's enforcement measure triggers only the shelter space services are in place. Is that accurate? I guess that's to either one of you guys.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of Measure O, right? Is frankly, we've seen our city and our county take a haphazard approach, I'll say, to be nice, in terms of enforcement, where you see them break up encampments without offering a lot to the people there. And so the whole goal of this measure is to, in fact, ensure that there's shelter space available, so that when people are asked to move out of a public space, there's somewhere safe and secure for them to go. The only other thing I'll mention, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the Boise lawsuit, which happened a few years back in the Ninth Circuit. And basically what that required, it requires local governments to offer shelter before they ask someone to move. So I think for all those reasons, I mean, I appreciate the question, Chris, but you're absolutely right that without shelter capacity, you cannot enforce on unhoused people.
Okay. Did you want to add anything, Kendra, before I go to Stacy's question?
Yeah, I would like to just add, the concern about sheltering is that sheltering is not housing. And so after the sheltering system, we don't have enough beds, 1. And 2, if people in most of our shelters, they have to vacate during the day. Shelters are not, that is not housing. And another concern that we have around this is ADA issues. There's a lot of people with disabilities that then are forced to go into places that are not, that may not be able to even comply with this. So we haven't really thought through the whole issue of the whole human being need. Everybody is different. And I will say that I just want to add, the shelter in spaces, this is a regional issue. Our housing issue is regional. The city of Sacramento is not responsible for providing the services that the county does. So you're putting an unfair burden on the city when it is not their responsibility to provide the services that the county must provide.
Okay, Stacy, your question? And you're on mute.
Okay, yes. I guess my question was to Kendra. Well, what is the options? We've been working on this. This has been a very big problem. It doesn't look like there's any solutions. However, there's many things that has been tried. And what resources do we have in place? Because we know that without the resources, there's nothing gonna come of it. And I'm listening and I'm thinking at least something should be in place, something should be going forward. So to understand correctly, I'm asking you, what's the option?
The
And what
option,
resources is it?
the option is to not force people to do something that they have a civil rights not to do. It is not a crime to be homeless. First and foremost, it is a problem. It is terrible that people are dying, but at the same time, it's not a crime. And so what we have to do is lean in on the county, if you want my professional opinion, for the services that are needed. The city of Sacramento cannot provide what the county can. And that's one of the biggest issues. And that's the conversation we need to have is let's go to the county who gets 10 times more money than the city of Sacramento to deal with sheltering, to deal with mental issues, to deal with health issues. All of those issues fall on the county.
Okay.
Can I just jump in and say, I think this is absolutely a public health crisis and even a mental health crisis. And I think we need to treat it accordingly, right? Where just like we saw with COVID, we didn't let people, we tried not to let people just kind of make the best of it. We tried to really have a systematic approach. And that's really been our goal from day one with this. And I think it's also important to note, and I assume many of you have been kind of following the media coverage, but as we speak, the city and the county for the first time in, I don't know, 5 to 10 years are actually sitting down. And Kendra alluded to this. I mean, they're having meetings right now to actually figure out how they are going to cooperate and start to provide shelter and services at scale. Because she's right, and Mayor Steinberg has said this multiple times, the county is the one who's responsible for providing social services. And so the county absolutely needs to step up. And our coalition has been adamant about that privately and publicly. And so we expect to see significant movement in that space because our coalition and the broader community have made it clear that again, the finger pointing is unacceptable and we need our leaders to lead. And so we think Measure O is kind of a first step towards really compelling, meaningful action in that space.
Okay. And for me, and I think I asked Lynn this question when we were talking about Measure O. So what's going to be on the ballot is basically what the two of you have laid out. And so what I didn't hear, and I just wanted to clarify, that it is agreed upon both that the city of Sacramento financially can't take this on, cannot. However, I do understand there's a piece on the ballot that says if the county doesn't sign on because they have the resources that's needed, if they do not sign on, the measure would not pass. But in order for the measure to pass, in order for the process to work, let me put it that way, that the county would have to sign on, otherwise they would not move forward with the process. And so I just want to make sure, do I understand that correctly, Kendra, Daniel? Is that my understanding?
So there's an amendment that was, and I also want to have just some clarity to understand this measure is a measure that was voted on by Sac City. This was not a measure that was signatures were gathered. This was not done in the traditional way of that sense. So I want to be clear about that. And there was an amendment added that basically it's a trigger. So if the county says no, we're not going to participate and do this, then nothing happens. And then Daniel is correct. They're working together. So our issue is this is why we say no on O. It's not being done in the public square. You have no input on it. You won't have any say in it. You're going to vote for one or the other, yes or no, but you're not going to have any input on whatever they settle on at the end of the day. And that's concerning. That's not democratic. These conversations should have been had ahead of time and they should have worked something out. I think we can all agree to that.
And Betty, I'll just clarify, because you mentioned both the fiscal issue and the trigger issue. I think one of the benefits of having had the city involved in crafting this measure is that part of the reason they came to our coalition in the first place to work with us was that they did have concerns about the fiscal and legal liability. And so with the changes that were made from working with the city, we were able to address those fiscal concerns. And so I think that's an important thing to note. And I would also say, to Kendra's point kind of about the trigger, yeah, I mean, that was another thing where the city felt strongly about it. And so now we're in a place to have them collaborate. I guess I would just clarify, though, in terms of the process, there was a public meeting that the city had in April. There was a public meeting again in August on this issue. So there's been opportunities for people on all sides of this issue to weigh in. And so I think it has been fairly public. And I think the reality is, and I know Betty and you and many others, work on these type of issues regularly. It's often the case that policymakers meet privately before announcing something publicly, right? That's just kind of the normal course of things. So I agree that we need to have the community engaged both now and in the future on this. But at the same time, I think the way this has moved forward so far is really fairly normal for how these things work.
With that, I'm going to have Chris have the last question, and then Lorraine and I believe is Stacy. Let's prepare for the vote. Chris, this is the last question. Chris Jones.
Thank you. So it's kind of like a multi-part thing. So I heard a lot about criminalizing homelessness and so on and so forth. And I think we all agree that homelessness isn't a crime in and of itself, but there's a lot of crimes that get committed in the course of being homeless. Like, in the sense, I don't think anyone's going to argue that those shopping carts are being, like, acquired legally. And, the dozens of bikes that I see when I pass by are all being purchased over at Target. So, I mean, it sounds like we're suggesting that we ignore that. And then moving on, like, I just don't see a reason why. I guess I'm looking for a reason why we would not, as a city, do what we can. Like, yes, we're asking the county to help because they have the money, but why should we just kind of sit around doing nothing in the meantime, just because, oh yeah, it's the county's responsibility, they have all the money. Us sitting idle doesn't seem to help at all after.
Can I?
So
Sure.
was that a question or?
Yeah, I guess the question is, what is, like, are we suggesting that because homelessness isn't a crime, that we ignore all of the crimes that committed in the course of being homeless? And B, why shouldn't we do what we can to move the needle on our own? If the county's not on board, why don't we move the needle forward on our own as much as we can, and then try to get the county in after the fact?
So I'm going to ask Kendra and Daniel if they want to respond to his question. It needs to be 60 seconds. It needs to be short so we can go to the vote. So we're already after 12 o'clock. And apparently I didn't realize this topic would be this hot, but anyway, it is. So whoever wants to jump in to answer Chris's question.
I would say yes. There's been lots of movements in the needles over. This is a measure basically just to kind of get people off the streets. I don't know where they get their stuff. I can't pretend to know, but I will say that what policy is, it's power and money, and you don't want to be on the back end of it. I can tell you that. What you want to be is on the front end of it. You wanted to have participated in the design. Yes, those were meetings, but those were meetings very specific to the Measure O and where it was going. It was not specific to the details that the society needs. Where's the money coming from? How are we going to do this? How to flesh it out? So I would say, yes, that's important, but let's flesh that out. There's no resources. There's no money. There's no additional housing required. The city is not required to build any housing with this measure, nor is the county. So you're not going to solve the problem.
Daniel.
Yeah, I just want to say, Chris, I appreciate the question. And your point is kind of what launched us down this path, which is doing nothing is just unacceptable when you have people suffering and dying on the streets. I would also just clarify to your point, just to be clear, it is not a crime to be homeless, and people who live, just because you living on the streets does not mean you are a part of criminal activity. But the data does show that if you're living on the streets, the chances of you being a victim of murder, sexual violence, being caught up in drug trade, things like that is just much higher. And so I think that's where, from our perspective, if the choice is between living on the streets or having a safe, secure shelter space to go, it's an easy choice. And so, yes, we think there's just a way to improve the status quo, both for unhoused members of our community as well as housed members of our community.
I'd like to thank both of you for this fiery conversation, something and educating the community within the NAACP membership as well as Facebook Live. And I'm glad it's being recorded so that we can put it on our YouTube and in case anyone wants to go back and revisit the information that the both of you have shared today. So with that being said, I'm going to ask, I'm not sure if it's Stacy or Lorraine, to bring up the poll on where you see the NAACP. This is confidential poll, so however you choose. So I don't know how many seconds we have to answer, but either you are in favor, you're opposed, or you abstain. And so I'm going to say, go ahead and vote. And normally we give it like 30 seconds or something for everyone to vote. Oh my goodness. Is this a tie?
Ow.
Oh,
Wow. A dead tie. Wow. That's interesting.
crazy.
Very interesting.
Hey, I'm just, for my part, I can see the poll, but I can't see where to vote.
You mean you didn't vote?
No, I don't see it. All it says.
You mean you can break the tie?
I'm trying to vote, but I can't.
I don't know what to say about that, Madam Secretary. Lorraine, how come she can't see the vote?
All I can see is what's your position, but it doesn't give me a, I can't.
I'm not sure. Everybody else voted, but I can relaunch the poll if you want me to.
No,
I just don't see where I can vote, but that's, I vote. Y'all want to know what I vote? Because it looked like a tie.
Text me your vote.
Okay, we'll do right now.
And that just says what great presentations of both both of you guys did. That's crazy. I don't think that has ever happened.
All right, there you go.
Did you just send it to me?
Uh-huh.
You texted to me?
Yes. Oh, I put it on the chat to you.
Oh, because there's so many vehicles for Okay. Stacy supports Measure O, so that broke the tie. So it's, I shouldn't have said that, but that broke the tie. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I've never had this before, ever. But with that being said, and we had several people who abstained, but the information was great. And so I am going to summarize our meetings with the NAACP is every second Saturday from 10 to 12. We try to have town halls that educate you on different issues that come on with the NAACP. In order to become a member, you can always go to our website at naacpsac.com. It's $30 to become a member. And that lasts you for a whole year, unless you would like to become a lifetime. I believe Kendra is a lifetime member of, so that's a hint for you, Daniel. Member of the NAACP, and that means that you would be a member for life.
Betty, I just always appreciated your subtlety, so thank you.
Just saying. Jamel, do you have your hand up?
Yes, Madam President. In the chat, Rory Kaufman said he voted no, so it still may be a tie.
Well,
that's all.
Yeah, it's still a tie because I made the mistake of voting and I shouldn't have. Anyway.
Did we recognize that Rory was in the chat?
Yeah, that's what Jamel just said.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
And it just may mean that we went neutral on it. That's all. I will discuss this with my executive committee because I've never, in the history of me being the president of the NAACP, and I've been here a long time, this has never happened, ever, ever. So that just says the both of you did a damn good job of talking to our membership in Facebook Live. So with that being said, again, this is the type of lively conversations that we have in the NAACP. Please join us every second Saturday from 10 to 12. I'm not too sure what our town hall is going to be next month, but I'm sure it's going to be just as lively. And support the Black Film Festival in Oak Park, and continue to support the NAACP. Like I said, it's only $30 for a year or $750 for a lifetime. And if you don't have the $750, you know, NAACP has a layaway plan at just $75 a month for 10 months to become that lifetime member. And you can just go to our website at naacpsac.com and feel free to give our office a call if you have any further questions, 916-856-0155. Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry, Betty. I'd like to offer the Sacramento Housing Alliance. If anyone wants to learn more about the housing policy in Sacramento and the region, we are very happy to present more information in detail to really get a better understanding. It's very hard to understand the crisis in 30 minutes. So we're grateful for this and understand people's position, but would love to have a long conversation about, you know, the housing policy in our community.
Kendra, put your email information in the chat.
Okay.
So that
Right
individuals could follow up. And once she puts that information in the chat, Stacy, once you see her information in there, could you call it out loud? Because we do have people on Facebook Live that's watching this. And so they may want to call Kendra as well to have a deeper dive into this conversation. So it's Sacramento Housing Alliance, Kendra at sachousingalliance.org. Did I read that right? Because I don't
That's
have
correct.
my glasses.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so with that, with nothing else, as far as this is the time I normally allow any announcements for the next 60 seconds. Any announcements? Hearing none, other than to congratulate Roy Kaufman and his new position with the state of California, Amy Chong, Secretary of Operations for the state of California. Congratulations, Rory, on your new position. With that being said, Madam Secretary, 12:12, I am officially adjourning this meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Okay.
Okay.